Welcome to The Helping Conversation, an exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of facilitating trusting, safe, inclusive, and effective helping conversations with others.
Recorded at RockVox Recording and Production Podcast Studios in Rochester, New York. Mouth off at RockVox. RockVox.com. Having enjoyed a 40-year career facilitating his own authentic brand of the helping conversation, your host, executive and recovery coach, Keith Greer.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And as always, thank you for taking the time to sit in on this episode of The Helping Conversation. I want to share with you a blog post that I found that is relevant to our conversation and our guest today. The blog is called Toward a Spirituality of Creation Care, and the blog post specifically is entitled The Spiritual Universe. Physicist and novelist Alan Lightman is a self-described scientist, humanist, and atheist. In his book, The Accidental Universe, a collection of 7 essays, each one having universe in its title, the third essay is about the spiritual universe. Lightman writes in his essay that, quote, "It is sometimes useful to distinguish between a physical universe and a spiritual universe. The physical universe can be studied and understood through the rational methods of science. The spiritual universe is the realm of experiences that are not subject to rational analysis." He continues, "The physical and spiritual universes each have their own domains and their own limitations. Science can answer questions about the origin and evolution of Earth, but it cannot answer questions like, what is love, or why am I here on Earth?" Lightman acknowledges that in his life, there is room for both a spiritual universe and a physical universe, just as there is room for both religion and science. Each universe has its own power. Each has its own beauty. One of the byproducts of working in the world of substance use disorder treatment and recovery all these years is that it exposed me at a very early time in my career to the concept of spirituality. That's a significant component of recovery for many people in however they pursue that. I love this definition from Brené Brown. Many of you might have read her books or seen her podcasts. And her definition of spirituality is recognizing and celebrating that we are all inextricably connected to each other and to the earth by a power greater than all of us, and that our connection to that power and to one another and to the earth is grounded in love and compassion. For some of us, that's God. For others, it's nature, art, or even human soulfulness. Practicing spirituality brings a sense of perspective, meaning, and purpose to our lives. And I love the part about purpose to our lives, because how many of us, through much of our life, or at least maybe a specific segment of our life, walk around asking ourselves, what's my purpose? Why am I here? I had the opportunity when I was training in coach school to do some exercises around life purpose. And I remember them always saying to me, it's big, it's really big. And life purpose is not what you do. So life purpose for me is not being a coach. It's something much bigger. And I know that I've spent a lot of time thinking about that through my life and my career of why am I here? So I want to share really quickly something that is on the website of our guest today, because it just so resonated with me when I read. And then I'll introduce to you who our guest is today. I always felt there was more I was supposed to be doing for as long as I can remember. I never really felt fulfilled. I was, complacent. I wasn't miserable. I mean, life was good. I have wonderful friends, friendly, amazing friends, a loving husband, always had employment and seemed to have enough to get by most of the time. But yet, there was always this yearning to do more, have more, be more. When you feel less than, you spend a lot of time in your head. Boy, can I relate to that. You tend to beat yourself up, live in drama, question your life choices, and get stuck in a loop. All the while knowing there is a better life for you. It often feels like it's just around the corner, like there is something simple you could do to break that barrier. How many of us can relate to that? Boy, I sure can. So let me introduce to you our wonderful guest today who's going to take us down this road, this spiritual road. Ann Marriott is passionate about helping others awaken to the brilliance of who they are and all that they have to offer themselves in the world. She has been a diligent student of the universe for over a decade and has shared her knowledge, expertise, and passion with others through interviews, public speaking, writing, and healing sessions. She is an expert on manifesting reality and has seen evidence of this in her own life in substantial ways. Her mission is to help others see the light inside of them and give it permission to shine more brightly. She creates a safe place to play with that idea and expand upon it, giving simple, everyday steps that, when done, make a big impact. As your spiritual hostess, she connects you with that deep part inside of you that has been begging to be seen, heard, and acknowledged, and is ready to emerge. So please join me in welcoming into the helping conversation, Ann Marriott. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning. Well, I am just thrilled to be here. And it's funny, as you're reading all that, it's almost like a part of me is like, who is this person? Because for a good part of my life, I was wrapped up in that fear and guilt and uncertainty and, not self-love. And it's like, wow, I just kind of realized how far I've journeyed since that time until now.
Well, I love this topic. It's such a wonderful topic. And I know, this is going to sound a bit judgmental, and maybe it is, but I know there are people in our field, right, in any kind of counseling, coaching field, that sometimes poo-poo the whole spirituality thing. That's not the place. And I think sometimes it's because people do this equation of spirituality with formal religious doctrine, which we know it isn't.
Yeah.
And I have seen over and over and over again in my work over the years and in my own life, the power of this, there's something bigger out there concept. Yeah. If I'm willing to sit with it, if I'm willing to get curious about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had chills the whole time you were talking, and I love the story that you shared in the beginning. And when I say chills, I actually call them truth vibes, because what I've learned in my life is that when I hear truth, or I am in truth, or truth is coming through, I get this energy running up through my legs into my body. And it took me some time to kind of equate that to the meaning, and that, kind of, which is what happens when you pay attention. I
love that concept. I just wrote that down. Oh boy, does that resonate? That makes so much sense. Yes. Right. The first word that popped into my head is it's kind of your intuition speaking to you.
Yeah.
There's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're so right. And what I really love about the story you shared is just how, they did talk about science and spirituality and, and loosely related religion, and kind of pulled that together. And I just, I feel like you're really missing something when you just discount it all, because at the end of the day, and Brene Brown is just fabulous. And, really at the end of the day, it is tapping into that greater sense of who you are and who everyone is.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's get started. Fill us in a little bit on this journey you've been on and how you have come to do the work that you're doing today.
Yeah. And so there's two parts to my life. And, in answering that, it's important for me to highlight both. And by day, I'm a bankruptcy trustee. So I work in the bankruptcy industry, and I help individuals who are struggling financially. And then I have my own business as your spiritual hostess, which, as you read, is helping people tap into that part of them that often, is crying to be heard and seen, because it's been set aside for so many years. And with the whole kind of bankruptcy industry, I mean, that's where I really started getting into counseling and coaching and guidance. And I say that I happened into this, and, I won't go into the big, long details, but, saw an ad for insolvency receptionist, had no idea what insolvency meant, looked it up, found it was bankruptcy, said that doesn't sound like a very fun thing to do. And I've been doing it for 30 years. And I just got in there, and I worked my way through the ranks to this counseling role many years ago now, and loved it. Even though it's an industry where people are really struggling, and there's a lot of, sadness and guilt and pain, and but it just fit me, really is the best way that I can say it. It just just fit and it felt good. And it just became, I was going to say it became a part of who I am, but it didn't. It's who I am was really expressed through doing this.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You and I talked ahead of the podcast today. I don't know if there is a more intimate conversation than the conversation you must be in with people around not only the financial conversation with it, which is intimate in and of itself, but at that moment in their lives where they are in front of you figuring out how to walk through bankruptcy. That is a tremendously, I'm assuming, a tremendously difficult conversation to be in.
It is, and it is more so just because people carry so much guilt around money and the way they deal with money and finances, and feel like they're such a failure.
Right.
And, one of my favorite sayings, and you can just see people lighten up when I say this, and you kind of see, that light bulb go off is, tell me where in the book of life it says you have to get it right the first time. Not, right? Like not in your relationships, not in your job, not in your health, and not in your money. But we equate this financial piece to this huge failure. And, that's not what life is. Life is about experiencing, getting out there, quite frankly, messing it up, doing it wrong, and then figuring out what to do next. That's life.
Right.
That's our life experience.
The other part of that, I'm thinking, Marianne, and I think sometimes us human beings walk around and we think that whatever happens to us, good or bad, was totally created by us, and we don't appreciate the systems issue. And boy, finances is one of those that there are many, 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 many powers at play and forces at play that impact how somebody does financially. But I would imagine in that moment, people aren't thinking about that. They're just viewing themselves as a failure.
Yeah, not at all. First of all, not thinking about it just because they're wrapped up in the drama and pain of it all.
Yeah.
But also, I love that you said systems, because money is such a earth system.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it doesn't really fit us, at an internal soul level. It just doesn't fit us. Well, it's a recipe for disaster, quite frankly, because we don't mix. It's oil and water.
Yeah.
We just don't mix.
So so I'm so curious about that now. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by an earth system?
Yeah. And so, and I don't know how woo I should get here, but, law of attraction. So if we get into, so law of attraction. And you actually said, people get stuck thinking that they've created everything in their life. And, kind of, sort of we have, but not from a bad place. I mean, basically the law of attraction says that, what you put out, you receive. And so, and we are abundant beings. I mean, we're abundant beings. We have the power to create our reality in any way, shape, or form that we want to. However, we grow up in the system and structure that really teaches us the exact opposite of that. Let's just look at one of my favorite things when I do workshops and talks on money is I say, money is, complete the sentence. How would you complete that? Just out of curiosity. Money is,
that's an awesome question.
Yeah, stop thinking about it. You got to be fast.
Money is, you know what? What pops in my head is the root of all evil.
Awesome. That's what I wanted. See, because that's a underlying belief that has been put there. Now, the reason you hesitated is because it doesn't, that's not a true belief system for you.
Right.
But it's there.
It's there.
And it's there strong. So money is the root of all evil. Money, you have to work hard for money. Money is scarce. Money is, bad. You see a lot of people in the spiritual world, they don't like to ask for money because they equate it with, but I'm not living my true purpose because I'm asking for compensation.
Right.
That's what we've been taught. That's the system of money. That's not truth. And that doesn't fit who we are.
Yeah.
So we're in this constant battle, really right from the start. No wonder we have a dysfunctional relationship with money.
Yeah. Look, I'm sitting here right now and I'm thinking about when I started my coaching business. So for years before that, I had a clinical practice. Just about everything was paid through insurance. So the people who were coming to see me were paying very little out of pocket. So coaching comes along and, oh my, did I have difficulty at first. asking for compensation and feeling comfortable with it and saying, here's, there's no perfect formula, but here's what I believe my value is for this service. And it was a long journey to get to a place of feeling okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the system, right? I mean, that is such a good example of how the system doesn't fit us because, what you offer is valuable to the world and you are worthy of compensation, and compensation should come easily and be given graciously. We're not taught that. Imagine if we were taught that, what a different world this would be.
Right. Given graciously. Yeah. Not the message that we have grown up with.
Not at all.
So I'm curious, you're moving through this career as a bankruptcy trustee, and where in that did you take a little bit of a right turn and say, I'm going to start this coaching business with this really specific focus?
Yeah. And so that's a great question. It's one of those things where, again, I think it just kind of started to happen. So it wasn't even like a, conscious decision, I'm going to do this. And so there's a few pivotal moments in that. And one pivotal moment was I just had this huge incident of heartbreak in my life. And I always say, cracked my heart open, which you would think is a bad thing, but it's actually a beautiful thing because it really opens you up to looking deep inside your soul and moving through this grief and pain. And when you come through this, this beautiful revelation comes just in terms of, who you are. And so, that was one of the main moments where I just realized, I realized what I was doing in my day job. I realized how I was connecting to people on a deeper level. It wasn't just the training that I received, that it was something more than that. And through that time, I started listening. So this is that student, Universal University. I started listening to a lot of speakers on spirituality and energy and guides and, angels and God, just that whole realm.
Right.
And again, I trusted my intuition. And for me, it resonated as truth. And I just started to learn to trust what was happening in those sessions where I was giving advice. And I realized, and actually I'll share the second thing that happened. A friend of mine gave me a deck of angel cards. And so this was the first deck of cards. And so I started to play with them, and I would pull one and I would, give myself a message, and then I would do it for friends. And it was eerily accurate. Like I would do them and people would say, wow, that's like completely right on. Like, how did you know that? Or, and I started to realize, and this was probably the moment when I realized that the advice I was giving people wasn't coming from me, that I had this ability to tap in. I think we all have this, by the way, to tap into their energy at a deeper level and provide clarity and guidance on what they needed for their journey at this time. And that's where it started. And then, I did the same thing, and as you did, is I didn't charge any money for it. I just did it for free. And I had to shift my thinking around that because, again, we need to be compensated for our skills, and we need to accept it graciously. And so I started to build that into what I was doing. And then I turned it into a business.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have been firmly planted in your career in the helping world, both in your work as a bankruptcy trustee and in this work you do now. So if we knew you when you were a kid, what were you like? How did you go about the world? What was family life like? What were you involved in that would have been some pretty good evidence you were destined to work helping others?
Yeah. And again, it's funny how as we get older, because we start to see this stuff. I didn't see this at all when I was young. I mean, I was, so first of all, I came from a large family. I was the last of 8 children.
Wow.
And there were 6 years between my brother and I. So, I didn't have a lot of siblings around me growing up. And I was that kid that I kind of kept to myself a little bit. In fact, a memory that comes up often when I do this work for myself is being in, I don't know what grade, I think I was probably in grade 4 or something. And you know how kids used to pick teams. So we would play a game in school. Yeah. Well, I was always picked last, and it was devastating to me. And so that became part of the fabric of who I was, that I wasn't worthy. I was picked last. And I carried that, for quite some time. But, in answer to your question, there's a few things, you can't deny the essence of who you are. So even throughout that, I always had, some confidence in terms of who I was. I had a lot of friends. People call me a friend collector. So I have a lot of friends. And I remember being very young. Again, I'm probably, 10, 11, 12. And I had my friends would come to me, we'd play a game and they would come to me for advice. And so we had like this little, advice place. I didn't even know what it was. It was a shed in the backyard. And people would come to me and they would ask me questions and I would give them advice. So at some point when I looked back, I could see all the moments where that underlying thread was there. I could see the moments where it was pushed down, and I could see the moments where it was given permission to come forward, and how once it did, I really couldn't deny it, that at that point I needed to allow it to be.
Yeah. So I want to make a connection here between something you said a moment ago and what you just stated, because I am... Not that I don't believe anybody can learn how to do a helping role, but I do believe some of us come into the world more innately wired towards that. There's just certain inherent ways of being that work for us. Like at 10, your friends are flocking to you looking for advice. That's not a coincidence. So you said a few moments ago that you believe anybody can do the kind of work you do, kind of tap into to what we might consider the unknown. But I am sitting here wondering, do you believe there are some people like yourself that just is a more inherent connection?
Again, a few elements to that, but I think that when I said that, my main intention with the statement is that we all do have that level of intuition that, that we need to trust within ourselves.
Yes.
It's going to bring forth the different strengths that we each have. But I think this next piece is probably the most important. And this is, my belief. It may not be everyone's, but, I believe that as souls, we have various life experiences. And so you've probably heard the term an old soul.
Yes.
And so I feel like there's a very distinct difference between a new soul and an old soul. And when I do readings for people, I get a sense of that, because new souls generally have a lot of drama in their life. They sometimes can't get out of it. These typically would be the people who maybe get into drugs and alcohol and mask it and don't fit in the world and can't figure it out, commit suicide, those types of things. It's probably not always new souls, but, they don't have that same openness to the intuition. And so their life experience looks very different from an old soul who may also have the same issues and drama and concerns and things going on, but they navigate through it differently. So they have a deeper connection to that part of them just coming into this life experience. And, again, just in my belief, they're able to navigate through better. And they're often the ones that are helping others because they've already learned some of those skills. And again, I'm putting earth words to something that's not earthy. But I think you're following me.
Yeah. I would, when you just use the term old soul, the first word that comes to my mouth when I think of, in all my years, especially working with kids and teens, those that I would have labeled old soul, there's a calmness to them. There's a peacefulness to them. That intuition is there.
There's a wisdom.
You just beat me to it. There is a wisdom, to that should not be there for a 14 or 15-year-old. That seems to be there. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's also why you can meet a 60-year-old that doesn't have the same wisdom because it's just not there.
Right. I love what you said about in some of your definition of a new soul, especially around substance use disorder, that they're not open to their intuition. Because I think, so I do a lot of training of recovery coaches, and we talk all the time about certain ways of being for us in this world of coaching that helps people tap back into their intuition. That when somebody shows up on their first day of recovery, that is not something they're in touch with. They don't know what their strengths and capacities and gifts are. And how do you, in your work with them, help them get back in touch with that. So boy, that resonates with me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fill us in. Give us an idea of some of the work you might do, maybe an example, and what specifically you bring to doing that work with your clients.
Yeah. And so, I'm very organic, which means I just kind of, allow the process to unfold. Now, having said that, because you and I were talking and it did kind of cause me to look at, but what's happening beneath the surface, because I am very kind of, up here and visionary, and the tangible sometimes eludes me. And so I looked at the similarity between the two, what I do in the bankruptcy industry counseling and what I do as your spiritual hostess. And I started to see the commonalities. So first of all, thank you for giving me that reflection, because it was very interesting to look at that. I'm going to start by saying, and I'll go woo-woo first. I heard the term once, hold the space, and I never really understood that. It took me a while to get my head around that. But I'm going to start by saying I hold the space for that person to have the experience that is to their highest good at this stage in their journey. So I'm going to start with saying that.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is when you recognize there's no one size fits all. So when you recognize everyone's here for a different experience and that kind of old soul, new soul, you're not going to speak to those people exactly the same, because it's not going to resonate in the same way. So again, I really tap into my intuition. However, let's put a few tangibles. First of all, I always find common ground. I mean, as kind of a process, the first is really just to put people at ease, to find some common ground that you can talk about. You need to open people up energetically. If you start to try to talk to someone about their problems and their issues right off the bat, they're going to shut down.
Right.
Oftentimes, right? And you would know this and you've seen this. So finding common ground and getting them to tell their story, I think that's, really for me, the key thing. And so when someone approaches me, the first thing I say is just tell me a story. Just tell me a story about what's been going on, why you're here, why you connected with me. And then my next step is figure out what they want. What's important to you? What do you want? And sometimes the conversation has to be, what do you not want? What's causing you pain? What's causing you the most stress? Let's kind of look at that, because again, depending on the person you're talking to, that can be an easy transition from your story to what you want, or that can be a really difficult transition, because you said a lot of times they've really buried the issue and they don't even know what it is. How can they possibly know what they want at that point?
Right.
And so then getting some sense, and what do you want might just be, I want to sleep at night. I want to feel like I can breathe and, catch my breath. I want to feel some joy, right? Like it can be just very simple emotions and feelings to start to shift that.
Right.
And then I help them see how that's possible. I mean, that's, where I kind of come in and look at, and this is that part of, tell me in the book of life where it said you had to get everything right the first time, so that really that empathetic part of you're that you're here. Just recognize that you're here for a reason, that there's a journey that you have to go through, and starting to remove some of that guilt and pain around feeling like they're doing it wrong. We're all doing it wrong. We're just all doing it wrong differently. So, we need to navigate through that. So then helping them see what's possible, and then just exploring solutions.
Right.
Let's just talk about, so again, I'll kind of equate this to two of them. If I'm talking to someone about financial or bankruptcy, it might, I might focus on, let's just complete like a spending plan or budget, something kind of practical.
Right.
That's a lot more difficult when you're dealing with someone's emotional wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But then that's where I might come in and look at, tell me about something that causes you, something that brings you joy.
Yeah.
And so if someone has a pet in their life, we might talk about that. And just, I want people to feel into the feeling that they want.
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes.
Because again,
Yeah.
I'm a little woo-woo. So
Yeah.
sometimes getting
Yeah.
the tangible out of
Yeah.
me is a bit challenging.
So I'll tell you what I hear,
Yeah.
from my tangible coaching world. I hear treating people as their best resource. I hear you listening to their story, not walking in with your own assumptions. It's their story. I love what you said, and I think this sounds so simple, but I think this is such a helpful coaching concept, especially for people who are maybe new to the helping world, is because we're all, so-called trained to ask, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And when you have someone in front of you and they keep saying, I don't know, that question about what do you not want can so open the conversation. I've just seen light bulbs go off on top of people's heads after 10 minutes. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want. Man, do I know what I don't want. And so I'm hearing powerful questions, possibility thinking, and a solution focus, right? That's about as coachy tangible as you can get. That's awesome.
Well, I love that you put the actual words to it. And I think just giving permission for people to be who they are and be where they are and discover their own journey. And just, like I said, holding the space. It's the only way I can summarize it, is holding the space.
Look, I think that is of maybe a variety of foundational pieces of a really good helping conversation. Holding space is in there. That ability we bring into the room. Some would say it's somewhat co-created with the other person in the room, but to create this safe, trusting space. The other word that popped in my head as you were talking, Marianne, was I found myself thinking about the word spaciousness. Right, that the space is spacious, big, allows for big conversations, lots of different directions.
Place of possibilities.
Yes, a place of possibilities.
Yeah. An exercise I've seen and I borrowed and I do it is, take a piece of paper and you take your, pen or pencil and you put a dot in the center and you say that dot is everything you know. The rest of the paper is everything you don't know.
Right? I love that.
Yeah. So let's expand and we don't know what that is. Let's just be curious. Let's just be open. Let's just, know that there's so much more possible. You don't have to know the answers. I don't have to know the answers, but, let's step into that space to discover what that is for you.
Okay. I'm stealing that from you if that's
you
okay.
Steal away.
I love that. Love that. All right. What a wonderful metaphor.
Because we get stuck in our own mind and we think, again, I'm not doing it right. And, it's not working. And it's like, but, that's a teeny tiny dot. There's so much more.
I'm wondering if you also find that when that narrative is going off in somebody's head, I'm not doing it right, I'm not doing it right, that there's a component of that narrative that is someone else out there is doing it right. Yeah. And I just don't know that, or I'm less than. Right? Or I'm not as good as that person, some imaginary person. They don't even necessarily know who this specific person is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's an underlying thread of I'm not worthy in all of us. And for some it's stronger and for some it's deeper. And, but really, quite honestly, at the end of the day, with anyone I've ever talked to for any reason, that's almost always the underlying programming that's in there in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I had a chat with a gal yesterday and that came up and she said she didn't fit in school. So let's go back to, primary. And she was a smart kid and her teachers liked her, but her friends didn't like her. And she didn't quite fit because she was, quite frankly, brilliant.
Yeah.
And so this is a person who stopped shining her light, stopped her brilliance. That came up during our call, how important that word was for her, because she dimmed her light, stopped shining it because it was not received well. And this has been a struggle for her. She's now in her late 40s, and this has been a struggle for her whole life.
Right.
And we did an exercise. I guess that's another thing I do. I do a lot of inner child work with people, having them go back to their inner child. And we did that. And she had this complete revelation during that call of this moment in her life where she did something as a child and felt bad about it. And she had carried this guilt with her since, again, this was grade 3. Yeah. And this was a underlying thread that had impacted her up until this point. And we unraveled it and released it and let it go.
Awesome. I think sometimes people do not appreciate the power of a story like that on a couple of levels. The first thing I think of, again, as someone who worked with kids for a lot of years, is how traumatic those experiences are when you're a kid. I think we tend to, in our society, blow them off, and right, it's just kids being kids, quote unquote, but how traumatic that can be for a child. And then the other part, I think, is how powerful that moment becomes over 20 or 30 years when the person never shares it. It stays in the dark. It's filled with shame and judgment. And it becomes so much bigger than maybe it even was when it really happened.
Yeah, it's like a wound that's not tended to.
Right.
And what happens is, because it created this belief, this program, all of a sudden evidence of that belief and program shows up, and it layers and it layers and it layers. And then it becomes this massive thing. And that's, with her, we looked at this, I had her visualize it, and it was guilt, and it was this big glue, green globby mess of stuff, because it layers and it actually, takes on the shape and form in your mind's eye. And when we went to the core and we had that one little piece and we identified it and we did a little exercise around it, and we came back and we looked at this big, green globby goo of guilt, and it had changed. It was so fascinating. It was now brown, and it was smoking, and it was dissolving, and it was just amazing. So I guess that's another tool that I use, which I never really thought, is that whole visualization process. And inner child work a lot, because it's easier for people to feel compassion with a version of their younger self than it is for them to feel compassion for themselves. If you go back and envision an incident when you were 5 and you talk to yourself, you will give yourself so much love and compassion. You will never give that to yourself in your current day, in your current state, especially if you're hurting, in pain, struggling.
That's fascinating. I never thought about it that way, but so true.
So it opens up that possibility. It opens up that compassion piece, and it just expands upon it, and it just builds and grows on its own.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I'm curious, because you and I know not every human being is open to this conversation, to this type of conversation that you do. I noticed a couple of times you use the word woo-woo, and that's how a lot of people see it.
Yep.
But attach a whole lot of negative connotation to their definition of woo-woo. So I'm assuming that this is, on so many different levels, such an intimate conversation with human beings. Because it's intimacy not only about their own life and the things that they struggle with and where they want to go, but it's intimacy because it's maybe taking them in a direction that they have never gone in before. So whenever I think about an intimate conversation, the first thing that pops into my head is trust and safety, trust and safety. Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about that in some different ways, but maybe talk a little bit more specifically, upon meeting with somebody and moving in this kind of direction, what you're thinking about to create this space that is filled with trust and safety.
Absolutely. I'll just offer a twist on the word intimacy. And I heard this from one of my spiritual gurus, Colette Baron-Reed, I believe, says this. Intimacy is into me, I see, right? Probably heard that. Yeah. And I love that. And I share that with people, because into me, I see is that you're looking internally. And that's all intimacy is that you're looking inside at what's going on in there, right? So it kind of takes that, because again, there's a lot of hesitancy to opening up, but not so much when you want people. Well, there is obviously some fear around looking inside. Right. So what do? I share a lot of personal stories. I am, my heart's on my sleeve. I have done it wrong. I've messed it up. I've made mistakes, just like everyone. I share that. I share my personal stories freely, because I want people to know that they're not alone and there's no judgment, and I think one of the things that I hear more often than not from those that work with me, and especially, again, kind of coming back to the bankruptcy industry, they're expecting judgment, and they say, wow, like this was not what I expected at all. There's no judgment. And, on the other side of things, getting someone to open up to this, this lady, this experience she had as a young child. And what she did, she said, I really don't want to share this. Like, I'm ashamed of what I did. But she did share it. And the other part of that is letting people know, one, it is okay to express yourself, but not only that, it's necessary. It's the word I'm looking for. It's necessary to express yourself because you've kept all this stuff inside. And if you leave it there, it does fester and it does cause heartache and it does cause disease and it does cause pain. And so, speaking the words helps to move the energy, release the energy, bring the energy out. So really, those are my three cornerstones: being personal, sharing the stories, letting them know that they're not alone, that there is no judgment, and that not only is it okay to express themselves, but it's necessary to express themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Self-disclosure is so powerful. It creates such connection, and it is. I'm one who believes that self-disclosure as a helping skill is a pretty high-level helping skill. It's not incredibly simple. People might think it is. Oh, you just share a part of yourself. But in that moment, there's a whole lot of thinking going on. What do I share? How do I share? How much do I share? How do I make sure what I'm sharing is relevant to the person, not just relevant to me? And that's not a simple process.
It's not. And I don't think you can just say, I know how you feel.
No.
It's probably the worst thing you can say, right? And even if you say, I know how you feel because I did this, you're immediately taking their power away.
Yes.
So, a lot of times I guess, as you said that, I'm thinking often I will share stories of other people, or if it's my story, but it's a little too vulnerable for me to share, or I don't feel it's quite appropriate in the relationship, I will just share it as a story of another person.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and that resonates with people. And especially, again, I see that a lot in the financial world because, I'm a single income family of four. I struggle financially. I'm on a very tight budget. And I tell people that. I say, it's tough out there.
Yeah.
And I just say I'm a single, income family of four. And I've been putting together a budget for years. Doesn't always work perfectly, but, it keeps me on track. I have more control over the process. Like that's an example of something I would share with someone so I can give them some tangibles on what they can do to start to move themselves out of whatever sticky situation they're in.
Right.
Yeah.
Just back into your list of coachy things that you do that maybe you have not thought about. That it's very clear to me in our 40 minutes of chatting here. You are very authentic. You're very real, and that it's another bias of mine of what we need to bring to the helping world. If we're authentic, just about everything that comes out of our mouth will land because the other person reads it as real and genuine, and yeah.
Yeah. I also cry during sessions sometimes. I don't know if that's a skill or not.
I do too.
I'm a sympathy crier.
That was for me, that was it was very uncomfortable at first, but it ended up being one of the greatest gifts to me of 30 years of working with kids and teens is sitting in my office and being tearful with them when given some of the stuff that they were dealing with, and knowing that you can go there, not as the helping person, not lose control, right? Not fall apart, but what the other person is saying touches your heart. Yeah.
Yeah. And it does create, and I don't do it because it creates the authenticity, but it does show the authenticity and it does, and I think that if someone is feeling emotional, and from a coaching perspective, they're the coach and they're feeling emotional, and then they're really trying to hide that, it's going to create a discourse in the energy between the two.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the other strengths of helping people, I think, is to be strength-based. And that would be another thing I'm hearing you say, that you're looking for people's strengths and capacities, and again, helping them tap into that inner wisdom, their intuition. So I'm always curious with my guests what some of your strengths are. And these could be either personal strengths, professional strengths, but some of your gifts to the world.
Yeah, I think one, I am empathetic, as you've probably got a sense by now. I mean, I'm just empathetic by nature. I'm a good listener. I'm an excellent listener. I really listen, and I really care and that empathy comes through. I'm also incredibly organized. I'm definitely, a kind of task-oriented, list-oriented person. I like to give people tangible things they can do. So even in my woo-woo world, when a lot of what we talk about is intangible, I will give them an exercise that they can do. Because first of all, most people I deal with are very in their head and in their mind. So I think that's important. So I'm very organized. I'm genuinely curious. And I think that really plays well in the coaching industry.
Yes, it does.
Because I really enjoy their stories. I enjoy learning what they've gone through. I love to see that, tapestry of their life and what led them to the point where they are, and kind of going into discovery mode. Definitely a problem solver without a doubt. I mean, that is just, again, a thread that's run through my life. We talked about intuition. So, I would not have said 20 years ago that I easily and effortlessly tap into my intuition, but I do now, and that is a learned skill. And so when I said, I think everyone has that, we all have intuition. The more you learn to trust it, the more you allow it to come through,
yes,
the stronger that skill becomes.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm friendly. So I think that comes from part of being, a 8 children household. We're a very loving family. Always, it's funny. Well, that's funny. A little story that came up as I'm thinking about that. Actually, we were talking about stories. My dad ran a service station, and people would break down, and he would go and tow them to the service station. And then he would bring them to the house so that they could come and sit with mom. And I was there. And she would give them tea and cookies, and they would visit and stay while dad worked on their car and got them back on the road. And this could be late at night. And so I grew up in that environment. So I have that. And I think that's where my helping really, it's funny, I just made that connection as I'm talking. I think that's really where my desire to help really came from, was watching that.
Yeah.
And I'm methodical. I have to think about what I meant when I was thinking that. But I guess what I mean by that is I always do have a method. And I think that's because, kind of organized, and I like that structure, that even though it might not be I'm going to sit down, write it out method, I do the same thing each time.
Right.
I might go off on a direction because the person needs it, but I want to take people through a process of discovery.
Awesome.
And I'm fairly methodical with that.
Awesome. So I've got several other questions here, but I'm going to put them to the side because I have one very specific question, and I'm very aware that we're getting close to the hour. In your bio, you say, my mission is to help others see the light inside them and give it permission to shine more brightly. And I circled that because it's one of the things I am so curious about in my work. And so I'm curious on your thoughts on this. What is it that makes it so difficult for us human beings to be comfortable with our light shining?
Yeah, great question. I think it's decades of programming to the contrary. I mean, if you just look back at your parents and the life that they had, and because I'm the last of 8 children, my parents were always 20 years older than my friends' parents. So they came from a different era. And you look at the life they had, and your grandparents. We had the Great Depression, wars, famine, just it's in the tapestry of our being. And we bring that through in this lifetime. Now it's dissipating. I mean, I think everyone would agree that, well, maybe not as I'm saying this, but some of that old programming is starting to go away, and we're seeing more light. So they're talking about, if you kind of read in the industry I'm in, light being star children, children with autism, ADHD. We're seeing a lot of stuff happening with children and gender identity. Our children don't have the same programming that our parents and our grandparents did. And it's starting to shift, and the light is starting to shine. And it's awkward. I believe this is why we have so much youth abuse and suicide. They do not want to be in this world because we've created the structures and the systems and they don't fit. But I think it's shifting and I think it's going to continue to shift.
Yeah, I agree. That's an awesome explanation. I had not thought about it that way. Awesome explanation.
Yeah. And I think people are more open to letting their kids shine their light. I mean, unfortunately, that might have swayed a little to the other end where we're a little maybe too lenient with our kids sometimes.
Right.
But, I think we're, as parents now, certainly my generation of parents, we allowed our children to be more of who they are. And then the new generation of parents, which would be, now my nieces and nephews, and seeing them allowing their kids to express themselves more. And I think we're going to continue to see that.
Yeah. I love that. And the other piece we see, sadly, is culture fighting back against that.
Oh, completely.
Right? Because, when people, this was never around.
It's not the way it was.
Gay kids have always been around. Trans kids have always been around, right? They've always been around. They've just been in the dark. Or as you said.
Well, I love that you said that. I'm going to pick that out right. They have been in the dark.
Yeah.
They dimmed their light.
Yeah.
That is exactly why I call, because I have a membership program called Shine Membership.
Right.
This is exactly why I call it that, because it's about shining your light and giving it permission to shine.
Yeah. That's awesome. Us adults just need to get out of our own way when it comes to
we
stuff
sure
like
do.
This.
Yes, we do. Yeah. And out of our kids' way, and just let them be. We don't, it's not your job to organize your kids' life. It's your job to keep them safe, to express themselves fully, and allow them to walk their path. I mean, anyone who has more than one child knows you can do the exact same thing with both children, and they will be completely different because it's nothing to do with what you do with your children in terms of trying to shape their lives.
Yeah. Look, I always say we knew from their first breath, my two, we're fundamentally different personality structures, temperaments. Yeah. We have this running joke to this day, and my kids are 30 and 29, that my son, who's the 30-year-old, you always loved Rachel more. And we always are very honest with him, quite honestly, Joshua, she was easier to parent. Right. We didn't love her more. It's just based on who the two of you were. You just took a little bit more creativity.
Mm-hmm. I can appreciate that with my two.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the gifts of your work to you?
Oh my goodness. I love what I do. I it's even one of the reasons why, I'm starting this business on my own, but I'm not sure I'll want to give up what I'm doing in the bankruptcy industry because I just love it so much. It's interesting. It gives me a playground to express my purpose and to play with these things that really are just the essence of who I am. Working with people who are struggling, I think really puts life into perspective. You learn a lot. I learn a lot from my clients and the people that I help. And that gives me huge internal learning and growth. I mean, every interaction is that to me. I mean, being here with you, the questions you've asked me have caused me to go within and look at things from a different vantage point. And I've learned a lot about myself just in this hour. And I do that with every client. I mean, I think you learn so much about yourself when you're helping other people. I firmly believe you teach what you need to learn. You do what you need to learn. And so, by helping others and being open to what they have to teach you, you're expanding your soul's light, your soul's purpose. And I just see it as a reciprocal relationship. And I give to them what I would give to myself.
What would you say are some of the challenges?
Oh my goodness.
Of doing the work you do?
Oh, I have a hard time with someone who's in victim mode.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So, victim mode or victim mentality, they're so stuck in it and they can't see their way out and they can't see their light. You can only help those who want to help themselves. Yeah. And I had a gal, it was the most interesting thing. She came to me for financial advice and she was dying. She had cancer and she wasn't getting treatment as pancreatic cancer. And she was a hoarder, and she invited me to her apartment to help her. And I won't get into long detail because we're running out of time. But the point is that she wanted me to help her, but she was in victim mode. And I tried to help her the best I could. And it was so frustrating.
Yeah.
And part of the other answer to that question, the challenge is taking on other people's energy.
Yeah.
I had to use everything in my toolbox to protect my energy, because I could only give her so much. But when someone's in that victim mentality mode, they're energy vampires. So they take your energy. It's so important that you protect. That's probably the biggest struggle.
Yeah.
And not when I can't help someone, when I just can't get through.
Yeah.
It hurts me. It hurts my heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just brought out another one of those skills, which is really good boundaries. Kind of our need to know where our clients end and where we begin, and what to take on and not take on when it.
Yes. And again, honoring their journey, I think, is so important. Like I could see her journey, and I learned so much from her, and her pain and her journey. And I could see how someone gets completely stuck in that to the point where they do not see any way out. It was very revelatory to me.
Yeah.
To watch that.
Yes. Yeah.
And experience that. And I just gave her love. It was all I could do.
That's it. Right.
Yeah.
Right. We get going back to holding space. We give people space.
It was her own journey.
Right.
She died because, and again, this is my belief, but she had so much turmoil inside of her that she never reconciled. It manifested in so many illnesses.
Yeah, right.
Like it fascinated me to see how that happened. I think there was a huge lesson in that for me, and it was something I had to see and learn.
Yeah.
And
when you said that, I'm thinking, it just popped into my head. I was having this conversation the other day with somebody about the ACEs study. You familiar with ACEs?
No.
So ACEs is adverse childhood experiences, and it's really, really awesome research around the impact over the lifetime based on how many ACEs, how many adverse childhood experiences you had as a child. It's a way of measuring trauma. And the research has shown definitively that enough ACEs as a kid, it takes years off your life physically.
I totally believe that completely. And I've seen it.
Yeah.
I saw it with her, and I've seen it with others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's my last question to you. If someone was listening to this and they're thinking, well, Mary Ann, that sounds really good, but boy, that woo-woo conversation is not me. I don't believe in it. I can't wrap my head around it. I don't think there's value to it. Not that it's your job to talk anybody into it, but if you were to respond to those kinds of concerns or ambivalence maybe about doing this kind of conversation, how would you respond to that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that's me, not you. So again, you meet people where they are. It's your own journey. You walk your own journey. Bring the essence of you to this. You can't bring the essence of someone else. So if that's not your essence, then that doesn't come with you. I think that you do this for the right reasons. And, one, because it feels good to you. And in some way, shape, or form, it's for me, I now believe it's my calling or my purpose, but I didn't at one point. I just did it because I wanted to help people, because that was natural for me.
Right.
So I think bringing yourself, you have to bring the true essence of yourself, whatever that true essence of you is, because that's what's going to make you authentic. But the other piece is go into it wanting to learn more about yourself. Right? Like, I think that's equally as important. So you're not going in to save the world and solve every problem and fix everyone. You can't do that. But you're going in because you want to, help in any way you can. You want to be the best version of yourself that you can be. Right. Honestly, be curious and be kind. Yeah. Like that's how I would, kind of end that, is just if it hits a chord and it interests you, then just bring yourself to it. Be curious, be kind to yourself, be kind to the other person, and just allow it to take form. Yeah. Allow the space.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Mary Ann Marriott, your spiritual hostess, thank you so much for being with us today. This is a fascinating conversation.
Oh, my pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And like I said, I learned lots about myself in the process. So it was wonderful.
Again, one of my goals for this podcast, if there is one, is just to highlight there's so many different types of helping conversations out there. And I know there can be a tendency, even among us in the helping profession, to think the conversation I do is the only conversation. And we need, our brothers and sisters in the helping world need to be open to all of these types of conversations, because people are coming looking for different things, different conversations resonate. And this was absolutely fascinating. Love this. It taught me a ton about what you do and how you do it. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I think one of my favorite statements, I do a radio show on money stuff, and take what you leave, take what you want, leave the rest.
Leave the rest. There you go.
Right?
There you go. That's it. That's it. Yeah. And I will make sure, folks that are listening, in the podcast description will be Mary Ann's website. And please reach out if there was something that we talked about today that resonated with you and want to continue that conversation with Mary Ann.
And I do have a free meditation called Your Inner Light's Journey. I'll give you the link for that so you can share it.
Awesome.
And what's interesting about that is it takes someone, it helps someone connect to their light, and then they see their light from before conception all the way through conception, all the way through their life, and they can identify areas where that light was dimmed. And it's very, here's that word again, revelatory.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah. So I'll make sure that you have that, and there's a lot that someone can take from that.
Great. I will make sure that's in the podcast notes as well. Yeah. Mary Ann, thank you so much.
Thank you, Keith. This was wonderful.
I love that conversation. Thank you so much for listening with us today. And I hope you found it meaningful and thought-provoking. And again, the exercise that Mary Ann does, where she puts that dot in the middle of an empty page. This was one of those conversations where you maybe get to ask yourself, okay, the dot is what I know. Look at all that is in the universe that maybe I don't know. And that it might be worth my while to be open to. So I hope you're able to be with us again as we continue to shine a light on the skill and talent of those individuals that invite another into that compassionate, complex, and intimate space called the helping conversation. Have a great day, everyone.
We thank you for sitting in on our discussion today on just one unique version of the Helping Conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast, so we sincerely invite you to follow, rate, and most importantly, review our episodes. For more information on Keith Greer and this podcast, log on to keithgreercoaching.com. Please join us for our next episode as we continue the exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of the Helping Conversation.